I'd like to bring this meeting of the regular school building committee meeting to order. This is also a school committee meeting as well, so we've combined them so that we can have our school committee members here. And the first thing we'd like to do is say our Pledge of Allegiance. So Lorinda, would you lead us?
Absolutely. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I just got word from the mayor that he is on his way. So the first agenda item we have tonight is approval of meeting minutes from December 9th. Is there a motion to approve these meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Hershey. Are there any changes or corrections? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those are approved. And then next we have our January 12th meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, George and Dr. Hershey. Are there any changes or corrections for these meeting minutes? Yes.
I was in attendance. I'm not indicated as being in attendance
Okay.
on the meeting of the 12th. On the meeting of the 12th,
Okay.
I was there. I'm showing up in the minutes as saying something, so
But you're not in the attendance list? Okay, so we need to add your name in there.
thank you.
All we have to do is say something.
Anything else?
Dad, are you sure that's your signature?
Yeah. I'm developing a complex. I keep getting rid of it.
That was your evil twin, okay.
And also, if we could change Lorinda Visnick's to school committee member?
Okay.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of January 12th?
As amended?
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So, the next thing we have is the design development update.
I'll start off with an overview OPM report. The work's continuing to go well at the Memorial School. As you know, we've mobilized on site. They're in the process of coming close to completing the abatement operation. The process has gone pretty well. The demolition will start probably in a couple of weeks. Some of the interior non-structural demolition has already commenced. There's some of the asbestos-containing material that's staged down in the crawl space. That'll be taken out after some of the building comes down in order to make it more efficient and less costly to remove it. We did some additional borings on Friday of last week to help us assess and determine the average length of the piles. We want to be clear on our estimate and the pricing that we provide, that we've got a pretty good accurate prediction of the length of the pile. They'll be doing some test pits out there tomorrow. Bob will speak to the progress of construction and the early package construction in his remarks in a short time. There's temporary power to the trailers. I think the National Grid power and gas are still hooked up currently, but they've been, we've put in a request to have those severed so that we can continue the abatement of the building. All right. With respect to the budget, there is a copy of the budget attached to each of the packets that was handed out. We continue to track well on the budget. OPM contract amendment, the designer contract amendment, and the construction manager contract amendments to proceed into design and construction have been signed, so everybody's moving forward with that. The MSBA has issued the project funding agreement, so a signed copy is now in the files and available. Okay. With respect to schedule, there's also a master schedule, summary level schedule that's contained in each of the packets that's been updated as well. Early packages, we're continuing to track to the dates we've committed to get the early packages out. There was a progress set of structural drawings issued, I believe yesterday or today. We're having a meeting with the designer and the structural folks at AI3's office on Thursday. We talked a little bit about, someone raised a question about the independent structural peer review. That RFP was issued. The proposals were due today by close of business. I believe we've gotten 5. There may be one more, so we've got a pretty good group of structural peer reviews to choose from. David Gelano and I will work through that shortly. We'll do the structural peer review in 2 phases to support the schedule and to make sure that the substructure stuff is done in time to support the pile operation, as well as the superstructure coming after that. The city hires an independent materials testing and inspection firm to come out, do soil sampling, compaction tests, steel inspection, break the concrete cylinders to make sure the concrete's strong enough, and all of that. The RFP for those services has been issued. The proposals are due on the 2nd of March, so we will have the firm under contract to perform those services when the pile installation starts in April. So we're continuing to move on time, on budget. So any questions from an OPM standpoint? Okay, so then one of the key features of tonight is the designer is going to provide an update on the design development. I believe they've got a variety of material samples to talk about and we can look at. So with that,
Just gonna slide up here. We're gonna take some time tonight to go through and provide you with an update of the exterior renderings and also provide you with a progress look at the interior renderings. Many of you, all of you have seen the exterior renderings over the last several months. We have some updates that we want to share with you. There's been a lot of work that has gone on with all the consultants and the designers, our architects in-house, as well as discussions with the Green Subcommittee, working group, a lot of meetings, discussions to go through exterior, interior materials. Many of you are familiar with the exterior materials that we're proposing. We have a series of samples here as well that you can take a look at after the meeting. The exterior renderings, the first several exterior renderings, again, as I mentioned, you've seen, but I'm going to just highlight some of the adjustments that you'll see through the next several slides. The first here is the Cabot Street elevation that you all are familiar with. A couple of noted items on this elevation. We're continuing to utilize the cementitious product that has a finish to simulate wood grain, highly durable, low maintenance material in the exterior. The punched openings along the classroom wing, the administrative area, here in the lower section to the right of the entry, the guidance area above with the classroom wing located here. The base material is the simulated stone product that we're proposing. We'll get into a little bit more about that stone versus natural stone that the committee asked us to take a look at the last meeting. The center section here, the main entrance of the building, you may notice that this has, from the prior rendering, has reduced in scale Before, it was a 3-story entrance and a lot of glass within this area. That's been reduced to 2 stories, as you can see here, with the reduction in overall scale and glazing area. Also, this section here, there was a curtain wall located along this stairwell. We've maintained and you'll see in the next slide, we've maintained the glazing along that stair. We've removed it from this side for an efficiency standpoint. To the left of the entrance, the library is maintained on this portion of the building, and then you can see located here the gate that is the beginning of the bus loop with the small parking area here at the entrance off of Cabot Street. The loop coming into the site from Cabot Street, and then this is the drive going back out onto Cabot Street. So that gives you an idea of the overall flavor of the building and the entry plaza and the entry drive located here. Moving around to the opposite side of the library is, you've seen this image, or this vantage point before. It's the outdoor learning environment. This has been developed to reflect the design with the amphitheater, the small teaching area here, as well as the library and the connection, visible and physical connection between the library, outdoor learning area, and then likewise with the cafeteria and the outdoor learning area. Moving down to the site, a little bit further in the fields in the entry drive, you can see this is a new image where you can see the gymnasium located here, the outdoor learning area, the gated zone with the bus loop coming around the front of the cafeteria and outdoor learning space, with the fields located here, the library media center, and this is that glazing that we're maintaining here for the stair within the vertical circulation within the right side of the building. Secondary entry with the auditorium and the music section of the building located on this side of the building. Entry zone for the secondary entrance to the auditorium gymnasium area, and then the parking lot to the left. Then this is the same image as before, but we're going to go into and look at a larger version of the sort of zoom into the entrance of the main entrance of the building, which you can see here with the entrance vestibule, the library media center, entry plaza, the guidance on the second level, administrative functions on the first level, and then the overhang with the lobby beyond. As we get into the building, this is that entrance in the main lobby. Gives you a snapshot of some of the features within the building. And I'll just, as we're developing and continue to develop the interior material palette, colors, and the spaces, it's important to remember, one, that the colors haven't been selected yet. That's we're using a very neutral palette, and that as we continue through the design process and even into construction, that's when all of the colors will be selected, and it will be done in a very deliberate fashion with sampling of materials. And you'll see some of the material selections for interior materials on the desk where the projector is, where there's carpet, porcelain pavers, and wood samples, simulated wood. And you'll see that the intent of the design of the interior is to make sure that it is a warm, inviting space that is conducive to learning, and making the the students, the faculty, the occupants feel comfortable within that space, both with materials, volume, natural daylighting, and views. So there are a lot of components that go into designing the spaces. And in most of these spaces you have seen and we've talked about as far as their adjacencies, their volume, but this gives you a three-dimensional snapshot of the progress of the design. And this, with the main lobby, you can see as you walk into the space, we've talked about the transparency and making sure that their activity is seen within the space as you walk in. So we've got to the right the administrative area that can be seen from inside and out. You can see that the windows, as we've talked about in the past, windows from the administrative area out to the plaza, there's a very direct connection to make sure that overall observation and sight lines are maintained. On the second floor is the guidance and nurse suites, and then this secondary corridor, or the corridor on the second level, leading to the cafeteria space, and then the first floor leading to the cafeteria space is located here. To the left, we'll see in a few minutes the library, but what we're using here is simulated wood lay-in ceiling that gives a really nice warm feature to the center of the space, and then wood on the columns, as well as painted drywall within the center of the space. A lot of really nice natural daylighting, and then a feature wall here at the front of the lobby with a multi TV display that we've talked about, is introducing the branding component to the building, and how can that connect into the educational curriculum and display some of the activity that's going on within the building. This is looking a little bit further into the space, and we've talked, if you recall, even going back to the educational visioning sessions, there was a lot of discussion about making sure that the activity was front and center within the building as you approach the building and as you approach the entrance to the building. And to the left-hand side of the main lobby, you can see that there's a very clear visible sight lines into the Library Media Center through that lobby space. Balcony on the right-hand side with the display wall located here. As you walk into the Library Media Center, this is a vantage point looking from the front of the library, the two-story library space that is facing. You're looking from the front of the library near Cabot Street, across the library, toward the outdoor learning environment. And we've talked a lot about the connection, the educational connection, and the importance of making sure that the Library Media Center is both visible and physical, has visible and physical connection to the outdoor learning space. And so you're seeing through to the outdoor learning space this physical connection on either side of this the glass wall here. You can see that it's a really nice volume with a two-story space, and then it breaks down in scale intentionally to provide a variety of volumes and size spaces within the Library Media Center. To the right is the entrance of the Library Media Center from the cafeteria, and then further to the right, just outside of the view, is the windows that you would look into the library from the lobby. What we just saw, that's on the right-hand side, located here. The library, we've talked about the combination of variety of spaces, whether that's a quiet, small reading areas with reading nooks located here, or instructional spaces, which is located on the right-hand side, as well as on the opposite side here. The tech and library work area to the left, as well as a multimedia makerspace that's being developed to coincide with the curriculum and the technology component of the makerspace. And then there's a quiet reading zone to the left of the front area here. It's just outside of view, connecting to the outdoor learning environment. This is a view of the cafeteria that is, if you're walking through the lobby, and the two connecting, if you walk through this space here, this transition zone, first floor, second floor, and look across the cafeteria, that's what you see. So you see the two-story space, the outdoor learning area with this simulated wood ceiling that I was referring to earlier. There's a model sample of the material on the desk, and it's a really nice material that looks like wood. It's not wood. It's installed very similar to a typical acoustic ceiling tile lay-in ceiling, but gives a really nice warm effect of the entire space. The second floor balcony located here, and then the other spaces, the tech space, the art space, as well as the entries into each of the neighborhoods. We'll see another vantage point for looking at this area with the neighborhoods. Indoor-outdoor connection with sliding doors here. So this space on this side, as well as the opposite side, can open up into the outdoor learning space. And then a teaching wall that is located here, and then likewise on the opposite side as well. Yep.
Does that wood paneling have some sort of acoustic properties?
It does. In fact, yeah, it does. All that entire surface on the back side is lined with acoustic material. Yeah. And it's necessary. It's definitely, within a space like that, it's important to make sure that there is acoustic treatment naturally for the sound deadening and absorbing properties. Yep. One of the things that was discussed during the working group meeting is that acoustics was a question regarding. We've talked about the connection between the cafeteria, the maker-builder spaces, and the adjacent neighborhoods. And we had our acoustic engineer take a look at what effects, if any, the acoustics within that open cafeteria would have on the makerspace and the spaces within those neighborhoods. And when they analyzed the spaces and the decibel levels, they came back to us and said that the maker spaces as well as the instructional spaces wouldn't be affected by the activity in a dining room setting, which is the loudest condition within this cafeteria. It wouldn't have any detrimental acoustic effect on the other spaces within the neighborhoods. So that was something that was discussed during a question that came up during the working group meeting. This is a look, as I mentioned, looking back into the neighborhood entry. This is a snapshot at, if you recall, at each of the neighborhood entries. There's a makerspace that can open up to the cafeteria and open up to the adjacent corridor. And this is a snapshot looking from the cafeteria toward the makerspace, and at the right-hand side here is the corridor going into the neighborhood. This essentially becomes the gateway to the neighborhood and the activity that's going on in the neighborhood and the makerspace. In the rendering, it looks really chaotic because there's a lot of things going on in the way we put the furniture and the movable carts. The entrance looks like there's a lot of activity going on. And that's intentional. There should be a lot of activity that occurs within the space. But you can see the breakdown of the glass walls that would fold out from the corner into these zones here and here. The glass wall that students are writing on in this location, the overhead power, the writable surface within the space. It's intended to be a completely flexible environment, and we'll talk later on during the design process about what furniture gets selected for those spaces, what are the movable cart and storage needs, the 3D printers, all of the accessories, what does that look like, and how is that space developed when we talk about furniture, fixtures, and equipment. But we've talked about the fact that this space will have overhead power, it will have technology, it will have a lot of writable surface, it will have water, it will have a lot of surface area to work, counter or horizontal surface area to work on various projects, and storage space. So this just gives you an idea, a snapshot of the volume and the makeup of that space. This is on the second floor, looking back on the balcony, looking back over the cafeteria and out into the outdoor learning environment. And you can see the various zones with the library zone here and the amphitheater in the center, and then smaller learning zones within the overall space. This is looking back the opposite direction again with those spaces that we've talked about. One of the questions at the last meeting, and then also during the working group, was the amount of porcelain wall tile, or protecting the walls within the neighborhood and the building with a durable, easily washable material. And so we have put these two elevations together. One is, in this elevation, is a snapshot of one classroom section, the center area within the neighborhood. So that's looking at, this is an entrance to the classroom. This is a window between the classroom and the corridor. This is the outdoor, or the small inclusion breakout area, and then this is a display, student work display on the left-hand side. But what we're showing here is, and we've talked with the Green Subcommittee about this, as well as the working group about this concept of the porcelain tile, wall tile, and at what height is appropriate, both from a functional standpoint as well as coordination with various building equipment and devices. And you can see the bottom image is of a tile at 4'6" above the finished floor, and the top one is a tile at porcelain wall tile at 5'6" above the finished floor. And either one works with coordination with devices, with signage, and the consensus amongst the group is that 4'6" appears to be the appropriate height functionally, And we'll continue to work with the working group in this group to define exactly what that means throughout the building. Is that on every single wall? Is there another material introduced that could work with the porcelain tile in the elevations and in the building to maintain the overall integrity of the durability while saving some cost. So it's looking at a balance of those two aspects. Yep.
What's the material of the tile?
That's, yeah, it's a abuse-resistant drywall, which is sheetrock. That's a brand name. Yep. It's a more dense. Abuse-resistant is a more dense material that can take much more abuse than typical drywall.
What kind of paint on it?
It hasn't been determined exactly what the paint is, but most likely it will be a semi-gloss or a matte or a eggshell finish. The paint. One of the things we're working with Mike and his group on is exactly what's the best finish for the city for durability and long-term maintenance. And there's certainly been a lot of improvement in the amount of sort of the scrub test that is used to determine how durable a paint finish is on a finish with the less sheen. As an example, semi-gloss used to be the best finish for washability, and a matte finish was not, because it wouldn't take the abuse and the ability to clean the surface. It's the matte finish or the eggshell finish has definitely improved over the last 5 to 10 years with the product. So we'll go through the process of identifying what's the best product. With semi-gloss, you see more imperfections in the material as you're looking down the corridor. With a more a matte finish or an eggshell finish, you see less. It's a little bit more forgiving to the eye with the visual impact of any imperfections. So we'll certainly be continuing that discussion.
What's the ceiling height? Is that a
Yep.
typical corridor?
In a typical corridor, the typical corridor, it ranges. Most of the neighborhood corridors are exposed ceilings, so it's going to be. You're going to see the ductwork, the structure, the piping, and the floor to floor is 14 feet. So the bottom of steel is roughly 12 feet above the finished floor. So the ductwork will be below that, 11, 10 and a half feet. Where we do have, and we've intentionally provided ceilings in certain zones. As an example, this zone right here, where the breakout space is, that connects the corridor and creates zones along the neighborhood, and that's at about 10 feet, 9'6" to 10 feet within this area, and it bumps up to about 10 feet here. Just as a datum, this is 9 feet at the top, the head of the window, and the head of the door transom. So that gives you an idea of the overall ceiling height.
So are you implying that the corridors don't have any acoustic properties other than certain breakout areas?
No, there will be acoustic treatment within the space, and our as an example, we'll have our acoustic engineer is looking at the acoustics within the neighborhoods, within the corridors, within the classrooms, and all the other spaces, and they are making recommendations on whether we expand this area here that has lay-in ceiling tiles, typical 2x2 acoustic ceiling tiles, or in some other areas whether we have wall treatment for acoustics, It hasn't been completely determined exactly what the final layout will be for ceiling versus wall, or even the overall square footage of required area. That's something within this next phase we're working with our acoustics engineer on.
We
Troy,
we have asked them for inexpensive options on the areas that we definitely want to expose the ceiling. You know, what material could we attach that would not impact our desire to have exposed ceilings and exposed utilities, but at the same time provide an economical solution. So see what they come back with.
Troy, just for both our benefit and the public's, roughly what % design are we at as we're having this conversation and these kind of questions are still being sorted through?
Yeah, we're just after design development. We're about 20%, 30% into construction documents. Yep. And the 60% construction document set is due in April. So in May, due in April to the estimators, in May to the MSBA. So we're moving toward that target.
So some of the questions that we have, they're certainly all helpful and relevant, but some of the answers we haven't arrived fully at yet.
Correct.
At the same time.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the tile, is that, I'm looking at the rendering, is that like a 12 by 24 tile?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, they're actually two different sizes. Just as you said, this is 12 by 24, and then these are a smaller 4 by 4 tile here with underneath the window.
They'd be mounted on like a 6-inch cove base, or?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
just thinking of, when you're trying to save some money putting tile on a wall, the less cutting you have to do saves you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if you can make the design so that the top has the rounded bullnose at the top, and you cut down on the amount of tile cutting,
Yeah.
it'll be more economical.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point and valid point. And one of the things you can see here is that we adjusted our opening to the classroom with a window to have a regular 8-foot dimension, so that tile in this situation would run up both jambs of the window, so that there was less cutting. Definitely a very good point. Yeah.
Oh, Joe?
I just think it's important to note that based on what we heard at the Green Subcommittee meeting, that if I understand it right, as of right now, this porcelain wall tile is not part of the budget. Is that
It's
correct?
good segue, Joe. This
I just think it's important for the group to realize
sure.
that.
Yeah. No. Thank you. This slide shows you, just to Joe's point, when we've discussed this with the working group and also the Green Subcommittee, the wall tile that is included within the estimate was assumed, and we were making assumptions on a variety of materials, but with this particular, within the DD estimate, but with this particular product, we were assuming that on each floor, all 4 floors, that this section of the building would have wall tile. And so what you see here is the 100% DD estimate at approximately 1,260 square feet, $22 a square feet. There's about $27,000, $28,000 worth of wall tile. We've talked since about what is that scope? What is that balance or the square footage? And inserting, this is a calculation we did, just taking all of the surface area that would apply within the neighborhoods, 3 neighborhoods per floor, and then the 4 floors, as well as maintaining the tile within this area, as well including tile along the corridors of the gymnasium down below, and then the auditorium corridors up on the 2nd level. And you can see with 4'6" above finished floor, it's about 15,900 square feet. That's a delta of about just over $300,000. And then at 5'6", the delta, it's about 19,000 square feet, and the delta is just under $400,000. So it's something that when I say we're working with the working group and the subcommittee to identify what's the balance, what's the right square footage, this is what we're talking about as well as the cost impact. And as we continue through this phase, through 60% CDs and work through the estimates, that is a point when we'll really know what the balance is, when the estimators can see the documents as a whole and see what the cost impact may be here. And the reason I say that is not only is this particular phase is a phase when product square footages, scope adjust, because we're really getting into a lot of detail and discussions with you folks as well as the working group on the details of the design. And so material square footages will adjust, and at 60%, we'll have a really good handle on what the material costs and the overall cost of the building will be. The reason I say that is, as an example, this is a cost impact. We're also looking at ways to reduce costs, and we're working with Agostini Bacon and our consultants right now to try to really hone in on the piles, the quantity of piles, the depth of piles, and the structural framing, because that's the next large early package that will come out with the piles on March 1st. The next will be in April. So we're getting into much more detail and honing in on the design of that section of the building very quickly. And as a result, we've been able to balance off some of the structural piles, reduce piles in some areas, and work with Agostini to refine some of the retaining walls, particularly with the design of the auditorium in this section of the building relative to the site grading. And so that's just one example of how we're collectively trying to, if there is a component like the tile or the epoxy terrazzo that we talked about at the last meeting that really has a huge impact on the overall cost of interior materials, we're trying to see where we can balance that off. There may come a point where we have to say, all right, we need to value engineer 60% CDs, the estimate when we receive that. That'll be a point where we will likely come back and say, all right, here are the various categories. Here's the value of those categories, and where do we need to make some adjustments to the scope of work related to those categories. So something we're continuing to work on and
this was your next slide. So.
No, that's a good segue. The lower section is the tile, just a snapshot of the tile that was assumed within the toilet rooms, in looking at the balance there as well. Not nearly as much of an impact as the wall tile in the corridors, but it gives you an idea of what we're thinking there as well. Another topic that came up at the last meeting that we were asked to present and take a look at is the in the classrooms in the personal student storage compartments, and a couple of things that we've done over a series of meetings, and it really goes back to the beginning educational visioning sessions, and just the movement or the way the storage, personal storage areas are being developed with the introduction of more technology and the desire to eliminate the cells or the locker room or the lockers lining the corridors within the neighborhoods. And we talked about it initially, discussed it during the visioning sessions, and then we've had a series of meetings last fall, this spring, and then this past fall with the administration, the faculty and staff regarding the compartments and storage units within the classrooms. And we had probably a half dozen variations of options and layouts that we went through during the discussions. And this is the one that evolved from those discussions. And the two images you see here, the top image is of the classroom wall looking toward the corridor. So this is the entry with a window between the corridor and the entry here, a corridor and classroom. And then you can see the series of built-ins in storage area cabinets for both students and also for the classroom. And the way it breaks out is just inside of the entry here, there are 24 smaller storage compartments that are lockable, and those storage compartments are about 11.5 by 5 to 5.5 inches here, 17 inches in depth, and that's where students would store their personal belongings that need to be locked. And then beneath that is a zone for boots or shoes, smaller items that need to be stored underneath. To the left, you can see the storage. These are open storage areas with hooks that students would store their coats or scarves or hats within this zone here. There 12. So there would be a hook on each side within this zone. So there are 12. 2 students would have a hook, one on each side within each zone. Then the remainder of the storage is in the 5-6. We'd have a sink here with a countertop, as well as base cabinets, lockable upper cabinets you can see here, and then wardrobe and also device storage for classroom-specific devices and charging, as well as below you can see here is a personal storage area for teachers within this cabinet or built-in, with open shelving located here. This area also serves as a low countertop for distribution of material or pamphlets or things, work material for the individual classroom, right in front or at the entrance to the space. I don't know if Matt or Steve, you want to add to that, or if that's okay if you don't. I'm just.
It's about what we talked about. As Troy alluded to, we had a series of discussions about how this should look like, and I think there was a lot of split amongst the staff of whether it should be lockers, they should be in the classrooms, outside the classrooms, and after everything was said and done, this variation seemed to have the most desire to be moved forward. And I think, we've seen a lot of variations of that. Those compartments that you can see are locked. I think they're having some areas where students can lock their valuables, their personal items was important. The areas where they could put their jackets were important, again, particularly in the winter where some of those jackets get bigger, where they can share that. I know some of you might be thinking, well, there's there might be 4-person teams or 2-person teams. That is correct, but remember, we will have that extra classroom in those areas. If we think in 7, 8, we'll have other classroom space there, so we'll have extra homerooms there as well. So it should accommodate all the students we have in a team in an area. So that seems to be something that will be convenient for us, so they don't have to go from one space to the other. Overall, I think having everything in one classroom, in middle school, there are a lot of things that happen in the hallway, happen in areas where we're not supervised. This should provide an area where there's more supervision. Is it crowded in that area? It could be crowded in that area. It's crowded in the areas that we currently have with our lockers, but at least we're confining it to about 24 students in that area, and it's up to us to devise a schedule where they're going from class to class and when they're getting the belongings. So overall, this is something that has a lot of variations thereof, and going forward, this is my first time seeing this slide as well, so, but it's a variation that we've talked about previously from our meetings with staff.
What are the dimensions of the open little cubby things? What are the dimensions of that?
Yeah, these are 12 by 2.5 feet, 30 inches.
And that's for coats, backpacks, for 2 people.
That's right, yep.
Seem like that.
They could store it in there.
Is that systems furniture or is that millwork?
This is intended to be millwork, yep.
Would it be cheaper as systems furniture?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you.
be
Something that we've asked our furniture, fixtures, and equipment consultant to take a look at whether or not it would be beneficial to look at all of this being provided as part of the all the built-ins provided as part of the fixtures, furniture, and equipment, or if it's more cost-effective to do it as part of the base bid. So we're in the process of evaluating, because we also want to make sure that all of the building components, whether that's desks or other storage units, are consistent with the built-ins in the base bid. So honestly, I don't know the answer to the question yet, but we're looking into that.
Joanna, and then Jen?
Is this would be the same for grades 5 through 8?
5 through 8,
5
yes.
through 8 for all
Yep.
the classrooms.
The difference would be that 7 and 8 would have a separate base cabinet here to replace the sink. We don't have sinks in the classrooms in 7 and 8.
So, in the space being used, that's your homeroom, and that's where you're coming in the morning, and that's when you're putting stuff in for kids who are, I think about the way the Briscoe School is now, they're getting books during the day or changing materials or that sort of thing. Is it envisioned that they'd be coming into the classroom to get stuff if they needed it, if they had locked it, or what's the flow?
They would have to they would come into the classroom if they needed to get something between classes, or if they forgot something during the day.
That seems challenging to have a number of children coming through one door to access that. I'm not, probably Mr. Posco would say the kids are carrying around a lot more stuff than they're storing. I'm not sure.
I think we'd have to, it is going to be a challenge. And once a schedule is determined about what they're carrying from class to class, I think we can make a better determination. I think it's fair to say that on a regular basis, students are going to their lockers to forget, to remember, to get some things that they forgot. I think knowing those students who are coming in and out of your rooms is also important as well.
Right, yeah.
So there should be some familiarity for that. Like I said, multiple variations of this. At times I was surprised at the willingness of staff to have this type of model as opposed to a typical locker model there. But I think it does, once a schedule is determined, I think we'll have a better idea what that flow will look like on a regular daily basis.
Jennifer?
I just have a couple quick thoughts. I've done some research on lockers versus no lockers. And what I found is the majority of schools provide lockers or some type of cubbies. I also find it very disruptive for students to be able to come into a classroom that may be in session to get something that they have maybe forgotten. Their gym clothes, maybe they're getting dismissed early, maybe they're coming in late. I also agree that if this is going to be something made out of millwork, it's going to be really expensive. I know that we're moving in a direction where technology is starting to take over. So I don't know if you're planning on providing a vented mobile cart or charging stations, or if you use iPads, but that's something that could be provided through FF&E. I don't know if students generally use their own iPads or laptops, and if that's something that's brought into the school and it is stored in their lockable storage. But from my perspective, I don't feel as though it's realistic to have student storage in a classroom. I think it's extremely disruptive, and you're never going to change the way students act as far as being able to remember things, or, you know. I also think that there's an overkill as far as storage in these rooms. The storage, the second tier of upper cabinets, I think is not necessary. I think that could be an efficient cost savings.
Can't reach it.
And moving away from textbooks and supplies, I think that's where we could save some money. Also, I'm concerned, and I don't know if you're planning on getting into security, but I'd just like to know how you plan on treating each classroom during lockdown. I know that we have a lot of visibility into the corridor and into the classroom. So if you're providing shades or blinds or frosted glass.
So just a couple of things. So I don't think I've ever been in a school without lockers. However, I don't think I've been in schools lately where the kids actually use the lockers. The other thing that we run into is security issues with lockers. So the kids quickly learn how to pop the locks on them so that they can, whether they're locked or not, they can get into. So I think for the staff, I think what's intriguing is the stuff that they worry about losing from the lockers actually will be in a secure area. Whether that's the right solution or not, I don't know. But as we begin to look at that, that's one of the issues that we have to think about, because the lockers, having been in middle school and a high school principal, the bane of my existence was chasing stuff around in lockers because the kids didn't use the one they have, and they all knew how to breach whatever the heck the new catch that you actually had from the standpoint of being able to lock it. The other piece is, a lot of this is the flow will be different. So while Matt's correct, we haven't exactly decided the flow. When you look at it, the teams will be self-contained in a very small area. So the time spent in the hallway for passing will be next to nothing. They're really just going to be going next door. And what we hope is that there will be some ability to be in the hallway and do some learning. And I would like to think that staff can, with the proper expectations of kids, minimize the, I'm going to come into your class to get my stuff because I forgot it. So it's really about setting that expectation and getting the kids to do that. So this is one of the most difficult wrestles, is that we know as professionals in the buildings that the kids aren't using the lockers. However, it's hard to get rid of it because everybody has lockers. And half of the people I've worked with over time can tell you what locker was theirs 100 years ago when they were in that building, because to a certain extent they possessed it. So, it's coming up with an alternative that makes sense. The backpacks are a challenge. unless we do get to the point where there's not textbooks, which is where we're hoping, so that you're not bringing, a backpack, you're bringing your electronic device, so there's not that huge backpack where the kids actually, what's replaced lockers for kids is their backpacks, so they have their entire life in it. So those are kind of issues that we're trying to wrestle with and come up with a good solution.
Ms. Visnick and then Mr. Guzowski.
I think it's worth noting that our fifth graders now have this kind of system, and they have 2 and 3 teacher teams. And so my son, who's a fifth grader, walks in during the day and puts his backpack in his cubby and then switches rooms to go get social studies from one teacher or math from another teacher. And, if the fifth grade teachers can handle that now, I have to imagine that they'll be able to handle it in a different shell of a building. So it's kind of what are you used to, and what are those children's expectations, and that's the environment that they're coming out of now.
Just a couple points. I read in the previous minutes that people were talking about lockers in the corridors, and one of the advantages is it would cut down on the amount of tile that you would need to put in the corridor because you'd have lockers in its place. The other comment I would make is this setup, and I understand what the intent of it is, but it's encroaching on floor space within the classroom, as opposed to if you put that same thing on the corridor side, if you will. Just a thought. And then the other thing is a 12 by 30 cubby for 2 kids with backpacks, boots, jackets, everything else. I think it's gonna be tight. Just.
I would say, I was in a classroom today, I think that cubbies they're a little shorter than what the kids use, but I do think it would hold it. I do think that those are adequate sizes. The locked ones do seem small, but.
Mr. Posca, and then me, and then Mr. Bean.
To one of Jen's concerns, we have had some discussions regarding technology and devices. So in talking with Troy and the architects, some of those cubbies either to the left or Troy, if I'm not sure, other areas of the building are going to be set up so you can charge your devices in there. Whatever those classroom devices may be, but again, it hasn't been decided, but you're absolutely right. If that's the direction we're going, we need to provide that outlet and that resource so they can be charged and used on a regular basis. So some of that, somewhere in that area, they will have that opportunity for that.
So typically, I've designed a classroom where we have tall storage for the teacher, it's lockable storage, coat, personal items, and then through FF&E, a charging station would be purchased. And I just don't know if that's within that budget or if it's within the construction budget where we're going to just have either made out of casework or millwork, a vented storage cabinet with power for charging stations that's custom.
Yeah, we have talked about both. In fact, right now we're showing classroom storage for devices and charging within this space, within this cabinet that can be locked. We've talked with the technology department, administrators about, as Matt mentioned, about having between 10 and 15 devices within each of the classrooms. And then also these, depending on whether they're built in or they're actually specific storage compartments that are lockable, that do have integral charging stations for personal belongings. That's a pretty standard component now within as something that's pre-made, that's brought in as an FF&E, as something that's not built in, as a custom built in. And that's what we would anticipate for something like this, to integrate both the lockable feature and also the charging feature. We would buy something, or we would propose that it be purchased as a standard, already assembled series of compartments that have that feature in lieu of having a custom built-in feature.
George and then Ray. George.
Two concerns. One is these overhead cabinets. I'm not sure they'd be very readily accessible without something like one of those old-fashioned library ladders that you slide along the wall. So I think that yeah, you have the space there, but you can't get to it, it's not gonna get used.
The kids would love that, George.
I know that, that's what,
Yeah, it'd be so safe.
I'm glad you said that, not me, okay.
That'd be really fun. Yeah,
The
we
other-
could definitely do
the
it. We
other,
can definitely go
concern I
back
have
and
is-
talk.
You've talked about project-based learning and having the capability to build something up, put it away for the day or the week, go back to it again. Where are these storage spaces? Are they part of this array, or are they someplace else?
The maker-builder spaces are the, those team rooms are the locations where that's a flexible environment where the students can work on a project, leave it, come back to it. The classroom arrangement certainly could be used that way, but it's completely up to the instructors and what they're teaching at the moment, and if that works within the instruction of the day-to-day activity.
So you're planning on rather large cubbies for 125 kids in the makerspace? What am I missing?
I'm sorry, maybe I missed your question, George.
For this project-based
individual.
learning,
Yeah.
you're going to have a project. You've got 125 kids in a neighborhood, rough numbers. So you're going to have 125 cubbies in the makerspace of some size? Is that the way this is going down?
There will be lockable storage and then open storage and surface area, both up above as well as counter surfaces, and then
More ladders, okay.
then flexible furniture. So whether there's 125 specific compartments, it's really yet to be determined.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stay tuned.
Right?
I think it suffices to say that you've talked a lot about this particular subject, but I think the meeting was basically set on discussing interior and exterior materials, and you haven't even started on that yet.
Well, I think this is a good,
So I think you've got a subject matter here that needs to be continued for review and more deliberation, because we're not going to make any determinations tonight.
and our goal is certainly not to make any determination tonight or approve anything, but I think the, as you can see from the conversation and the opinions and the differing opinions and the feedback, we're certainly proposing a building that doesn't look like the old middle school or the industrial style model for education. And anytime that happens, there are going to be a lot of thoughtful questions that come up. And certainly, we don't feel like any of the questions are challenging to the design. At the end of the day, all we want to do is design the best building we possibly can for 21st century education. All the questions just remind us that although we're thinking about a future where there'll likely be no books, I mean, I would argue that 10 years from now, there will absolutely be no students carrying books to school. But we need to think about all of the challenges that go with trying to create a more thoughtful environment. And there's some real practical ones that have to be addressed too. So there's not any point that was made that isn't a viable point that we need to just keep thinking about as we're creating something that hasn't necessarily been created yet, which is a good thing.
Troy? Can we go forward a
Can
little
I
bit?
ask one more question? I think that might help the group here. Have you ever designed a middle school without lockers? And if so, which schools? And do you have photos and feedback?
No,
Right.
we haven't designed a middle school that had no lockers.
What about a high school?
We haven't been involved, no, we haven't designed a high school that had 0 lockers and no locations.
Okay, so as a designer and as designers, I don't feel comfortable with what is being proposed. We are the guinea pig new school that is going to have lockers or cubbies in classrooms. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. I really think that we need to think about it. I've designed a lot of schools around administration that have wants and needs. That administration has since left. Things are not working the way that they thought or were planned. So I really think that we need to take this back to both the designer and the school committee and revisit this.
So, are there schools without lockers?
There are schools without lockers. I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs because we've designed schools where the lockers were all in the classrooms or where their cubbies were in the classrooms. And at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to get the impression, I'll say again, that we are, as a designer, saying this is the way to go. What we're attempting to do is listen to the educators and have a thoughtful conversation about what's the best solution. I mean, if the educators tell us to put all of these lockers in the corridor and line them up 2 by 2 and fill the corridors up with them, we work for the educators and for the city and for this committee.
So where we'll leave it tonight is that members of the school building committee have raised some concerns with the thought that we will not have lockers. Right? I mean, that's what's going on.
And in classrooms.
Some concern with the
And in
thought that we
classrooms.
won't have lockers. And so we're going to take that under advisement and go back and look at, no final decisions have been made, as you know. This is something that is in front of us all as a proposal. So we'll take that back. How much more do you have to go through? I would imagine there's a bit more.
We have, this is the last component right here. Okay. This is at the last meeting again, a question was raised as we were going through the materials selection at the last building committee meeting. You may recall the committee asked us to take a look at a variety of stone material for the base of the building in sections that we're proposing it. And in the what you see here are 3 different materials. We have the simulated stone thin veneer, which is what you see down here to my left, is what we're proposing and also what we're showing currently in the design development estimate. The simulated stone veneer is about $45 a square foot. The one above that, just as a point of reference, is the exterior fiber cement material at $30 a square foot. We talked about that during the last meeting. That's the siding material you see on the building exterior. The next level, the next product is a natural stone that's also a thin veneer stone, and that is $60 a square foot. And then we're asked also to take a look at, all right, using a full natural stone full veneer, which is a full stone as the base, and that's about $80 a square foot. So you can see that the material we're suggesting is a lighter material, a more economical material, because of the labor intensity is less than with natural stone or with full stone veneer, and it's about half of a full stone and about third of the or 2/3 of the natural stone material. The difference in installation is very minimal between the stone simulated stone and the natural stone veneers. They're both installed on the system that we have currently designed as a backup material with a metal lath and mortar bed. And then the natural stone, the full veneer, would be completely different as far as the installation. The grade beam that it would sit on would need to shift relative to the exterior wall, and then the installation itself, the makeup of materials from the air vapor barrier out would change completely. So that system, and it's a much more complex install as compared to the other two. So that just gives you an idea of the cost, the differences between materials, and the difference between the stone material outside of the air vapor barrier. The actual wall construction stays the same in any scenario. The metal stud, the exterior sheathing, the insulation, and the interior drywall, all that stays the same in either of the approaches. Any thoughts, comments?
Brian?
Thank you. Life expectancy differences are there between the natural stone and the simulated stone?
They're about the same. I mean, natural stone is obviously is a natural material, and it's set into mortar. The simulated stone is applied to the exterior, and so the life expectancy, if you think about natural versus simulated, if you have a rock, a natural rock wall, that's going to last a very long time. The simulated stone, comparatively, is a long-lasting material and durable material. The actual life expectancy is probably not exactly the same because you're talking about two different material products, but certainly comparable with the installation.
Troy, is the life expectancy of the natural stone full veneer then essentially the life expectancy of the mortar? And then you've got to repair and replace. Is that?
Yeah, there are a lot of factors, including the mortar, and in the natural stone material, there's the need for a water cavity behind it because water will get behind it because it's the way it's installed. There's a need for that water cavity, so that plays a factor into it. The simulated stone or the natural stone veneer is applied to the wall, so there's no need for a water cavity, and so that plays a part into it as well.
Let me ask a little different question. We're supposed to be trying to build a 50 to 75 year building,
Yep.
right? That's the numbers we hear. Is that right?
Yep,
50, 75?
That's 50, yeah.
And we know that, for example, a roof has a certain life expectancy, and we'd expect to replace the roof at some point during that life cycle of the building. The exteriors that we're looking at, do their life expectancies track the life expectancy of the building? Would we expect to need to repair, et cetera, at certain points along the way?
There would, just like any of the other building products, there would be a point where you would need to, there's a warranty period, 20 to 25 years, in some cases 15 years for various products. So to suggest that either product you wouldn't have to do anything for 50 years is unrealistic. So there certainly would be a period of time in either installation or either product that you would have to do something.
Now, AI3 is not operating out there on your own with any of this. This is all in consultation with the OPM and the
Right.
construction manager. So you folks have anything you want to share? You good?
And again, just like the community, we're continuously looking at different systems, ways to be cost effective. One of the key advantages we have is we have the construction manager who's actually going to go buy the material, knows the subcontractors. So when we do get pricing, the pricing we get from Bacon Agostini is probably a better representation of the market. They also have the experience in installing the materials.
Mark, in addition to cost and et cetera, that you both also, I think I understand this, both Heary and Agostini Bacon, in addition to AI3, you have some level of experience and expertise and understanding of life expectancies, ease of installation, maintenance along the way. We've had a lot of conversations in the working group about the cost of maintenance, the ease of maintenance, the ability to maintain, particularly with the interior materials, but generally throughout the project. And so, for example, this conversation about exterior sidings and the recommendation to go with, what I think I'm hearing is a recommendation for the simulated stone thin veneer at this point, is a reflection of all of your
That's correct.
consideration and input.
Yes.
That,
I think I may have been the one who brought up the whole thin veneer. I fully agree that the full veneer system doesn't probably make economic sense. I thought that the thin veneer system was introduced because of some of the issues with the simulated stone veneer in terms of color fastness over time, and so forth. And I had thought the labor is essentially the same, and it was really just a material difference. Do you know how many square feet of surface area we're talking about?
It's about 9,500 square feet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's $100,000 or $120,000
Yep,
extra?
that's right.
Would it be fair to say this could be an addendum item in the bid, since it really is the same system, and you just add?
Going with the alternate, going with natural stone thin veneer would be something that we could do. The full veneer would be much more difficult because of grade beam
Sure, no, I
adjustments.
understand that. I meant alternate, yeah. I think that might be worth doing. We have had some issues over time with the simulated stone, and to the extent that we're saying this building is teaching our children about buildings and so forth, the more authentic the materials that we use can be, probably the better. Because I have a bias toward the real thing. It is, I think if we were to choose between a granite curb and a precast concrete curb for our roadways, we would pick the granite because we know it's more durable, it lasts longer, and it stays, doesn't spall and so forth. This is a little different, it's a little more protected, but still, it's at the base of the building and it's stone. I think you guys put it there for the reason of it gets a lot more abuse down on the ground level than it does up high.
Right.
So I would think that maybe the real thin stone veneer might be worth at least a look as an alternate.
Yeah, yeah.
right.
If I understand it correctly, I think it was said that MSBA does a building envelope peer review of their own as they review the plans and the specs. Is that correct?
The MSBA's commissioning agent will do a review of the envelope primarily for energy. I'm not certain that their review focuses on the various systems that are available. You know, they're evaluating and looking at the documents that get presented. It's kind of up to us to make sure we go through these processes and evaluation of options during the design, because they'll reply simply on what we send them.
Because in the past, we've had peer reviews on the envelope of the building, the roof, everything else. Besides and separately, all the mechanical systems were all reviewed by a consultant hired by the city, but now that I understand that's changed.
Again, it's to clarify, it's different. If you were doing a peer review of the design, that's different than the scope that the commissioning agent does for MSBA. The commissioning agent is looking to make sure that the system, as submitted, the details are appropriate. The systems don't have gaps, that the air infiltration is not going to be excessive, that the thermal properties of the material aren't going to have things expanding and contracting at different rates, things like that. They're not looking at it as a design review. Now, some of the comments we get from some of these firms, because of their specific expertise, have a tendency to fall into what I call a design review category, but that's really not their charge. We're trying to do that type of an assessment as we go, and the idea of alternates is something we've talked about and will continue to talk about, because for the instance of the stone, that's pretty much a material substitution, so that can have low impact on the actual construction, the actual bidding, but a potentially favorable impact on the pricing. So those are the types of value engineering elements that we'll continue to look at, and we'll continue to grow the list.
Well, just to be sure that I've got this straight, the only peer review that gets done, and that's a requirement of the law, is the structural.
That's correct.
Other than that,
there are reviews.
There are reviews.
There are
but
reviews.
They're not necessarily required by law.
That's correct.
And the only other one that gets done is a systems review, and that's overseen by MSBA and paid for by MSBA.
The MSBA has a
Not the building envelope.
The MSBA hires the commissioning agent. The commissioning agent has two areas that they look at. They do a MEP systems commissioning and an envelope commissioning. Typically, the MSBA commissioning agent has a subcontractor, building envelope specialist, that will provide that part of the commissioning evaluation. However, in addition to the commissioning agent, when we get the package, we review it. I've got engineers in different locations that look at it who do design review. We will, at the 60% stage, because there are more details available, be able and better able to make suggestions for alternate considerations or equal items to consider that may potentially be less costly. It's not required, but it's something that we definitely do.
So there is a building envelope review.
Done.
One-word answer?
Yes.
Okay. Are we good for now on that?
Yes.
Bill?
Had you considered using precast panels with stone cladding on them? So in other words, you're putting up larger sections at a time, hanging them on clips, as opposed to individual stone placement and...
Yeah, we really haven't looked at the large-scale precast panels, so I can't really comment on that. Typically, it's more expensive the larger precast. We've done precast on other projects, install precast and concrete block bases on other projects. The precast usually, based on the square footage cost, is more expensive than what we're suggesting here. But for this project, we didn't look at it because we know from past history that the precast panels are more expensive.
But they're less labor intensive to put up, and the labor is more expensive than the material. So it's maybe worth looking at.
Yeah, we can certainly look at the specifics.
But
Bill looks like the Denver defense tonight, and you look like Cam Newton right now. Sorry, had to do it. That's so something to look back at.
Yeah, again, we have in past projects looked at similar materials, and it was more expensive. That's why I say for this particular project we didn't entertain it, but we'll certainly go back and take a second look.
Even, just to be clear, even at the various cost estimating discussions, we've had half-day discussions about the exterior envelope of the building where Agostini's been at the table with their cost specialist, Heary's been at the table with their cost specialist, and we've been at the table with our cost estimator, and everybody has said, what's the most economical way to get stone on the exterior of this building, and ultimately everybody agreed the way we're proposing is the way to do it. So I don't want to imply that there are all these options out there that we haven't looked at, the experts at the table so far have suggested for the look we're wanting that this is the right choice, but we can certainly ask that question to ask them to take another look at that as a possibility.
Well, that's for the look that you're trying to attain.
Sure.
Okay.
All set?
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, is that it? Oh, before you sit down, Troy, I need to do this. I had to tease Troy about football. Troy Randall, for whatever reason, has been a lifelong Denver Broncos fan. I want to thank him for not putting the exterior of the building in orange and blue tonight in the slides, and I also want to congratulate him. We have these, almost weekly working committee meetings, as you all know, with school and city representatives and our three-headed team of Agostini, Bacon, Heary, and AI3. And it's a relationship that's going to last a few years, a few Super Bowls. And Troy has taken quite a bit of ribbing over the last year from people at the table, never from me, but from Dr. Hirschneider, as the Patriots were reigning NFL Super Bowl champs. So you've always been a good sport. Now your team's sitting on top of the pile. So congratulations. I hope you've enjoyed the last few weeks.
Yeah, as one a coworker said to me yesterday, they won the Super Bowl, but we're on to the next year, and the Patriots are predicted to win the Super Bowl next year. So.
We're on to next year. Troy has two sons. One's a Broncos fan, one's a Patriots fan, so it's quite interesting, isn't it?
It was, interesting.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for tonight's presentation. We're on to Bob. Yes, Bob Gilchrist, exciting things happening over at the site.
Yeah, quick update on the construction of the first early package, the abatement and demo. Things continue to go in a positive direction. We had a very positive inspection with Conservation last Thursday. Amy called me up after seeing the weather forecast and needed to rush out Thursday afternoon to inspect the erosion controls. We got a very positive report back from her, so we're good to go there. As Mark mentioned earlier, most of the interior asbestos abatement in the building has been completed. There are some areas, as Mark mentioned, where the waste has been contained and is in containers. However, the dirt that's been removed from the crawl spaces is all inside of containers waiting for better access to those areas, which will come during demolition. At this point, really only the boiler room remains to remove the abatement, and we're trying to work with the gas company to get the gas shut off to the building. That's our next step. We did hear today that a DEP permit that we were waiting for demolition of the exterior of the building has been received as of today. So really, as of right now, the only thing that we're waiting for to begin exterior demolition on the building is the utility cutoffs for the building. That's really all that remains. So our target schedule always had structural demolition started right around the middle of February, which will be next week. We still think that that's going to be possible, depending on the utilities. So middle to the end of next week. We actually had an appointment today with National Grid Electric to disconnect the electric, but they always put the caveat on there, except for bad weather. So I guess what we had yesterday and Friday classified as bad weather. So now we're back on the list waiting. As far as the additional early packages go, the next stages, March 1st, we are expecting the bid documents for the piling work on the job site. As Mark mentioned, we were on the site last Friday doing some more soil borings to try to define the length of piles that we'll need on the job site. We got some positive information in front of the school. I was not able to be there yesterday, but we should have more discussions on that before the end of this week. I think the soil borings are expected to be completed sometime tomorrow, and we'll get together later in the week on Thursday at the architect's office and go through those results and see if we can't pin down those average length of piles a little bit better. With the documents coming available on March 1st, we are expecting to bid those out. Take about a couple of weeks to do that and get pricing back from subs. So we're expecting to have pricing on the boring work somewhere around the middle of March. And allowing about a month to get the submittals put together, submitted and reviewed by the engineers. We're hoping to be driving piles on the site somewhere around the middle part of April. And that looks very realistic at this point. As Mark mentioned earlier, or I think as Troy mentioned, April 18th is the anticipated receipt of the 60% construction documents. That'll be the next stage that our estimators get involved, along with HERE, along with AI3, to develop that next cost estimate to see where we are in a little bit more detail. That is also the date that we're expecting our next group of early package documents, and that is for the foundations and the structure on the building. We've been receiving progress prints about every 2 weeks on the structural side. We continue to review those. I'm providing comments on how do we bid it, how do we make it more efficient, how do we construct it, how do we physically build what's on those documents, and do we have all the information that we need on those documents to put those out to bid. I gave AI3 last week a couple of pages worth of comments that we're working into each subsequent progress set, so that when they come out on March 1st, we get some real good numbers from the piling subs that we're touching base with. So everything from our end remains on schedule. Relationships with the city remain extremely positive, and things are going well, construction-wise.
Any questions, folks? Maria?
Quick question. On the project budget, there's some money in there for the Wiley Inn. What is that for?
I didn't hear.
The Wiley Inn?
Yes.
Project budget? Could you explain what that was for?
Yeah, those were some early on
Brian, I don't-
educational brainstorming sessions that took place. Half of it, I think, was covered through.
Can you hear him? You're not near a microphone. I don't.
Sorry.
Try that again.
Thank you. Thanks, Thad. The Wiley Inn were some costs that we spent early on in the project when we were doing the educational brainstorming sessions. There was some breakout work groups that took place over there.
So there were payments for space.
They were
use
payments
of
for
space.
and they were split. Endicott actually paid for half of it and only charged us the cost.
One more quick question. On your first slide, Troy, it said advanced learning community. What's that lingo for?
That is a phrase that we've been tossing around with the administration as we continue to talk about branding the building. And that's not etched in stone. It's something that we put on there. Yeah, simulated stone.
No pun intended.
And it's something that we've talked about as a possibility of identifying what the Beverly Middle School is in a soundbite or a phrase, and it's continued discussion and conversation about branding.
My last one?
Sure.
This is for the principal. In regards to those lockers, for which there's been a lot of conversation, you said that the decision was kind of split amongst your faculty and staff, and in the end, you went what was convenient for us. And I want to know, what have parents or students given you for input on the lack of lockers?
Well, there's still storage space, just different than what we've had. I mean, we've taken the idea of a locker and we redistribute it to different areas. The feedback, we have not talked to a lot of parents and students regarding it. We have incorporated a lot of staff in, and that includes grade 5 staff. So we've had feedback both ways, from, I think Lorinda talked about how, this is very similar to the current model that's at the elementary schools with what they have with their cubbies and things of that nature. It really was divided down the middle about what people wanted. I think the feedback that we got a lot was there had to be some type of lockable space. So one of the things that you did see there was those, I don't want to use the word cubbies because that seems to throw everyone over the top, but that storage areas where there could be locked was added on. Places to put your coats and things of that nature were added on. When we talked about convenience, I think I don't remember exactly what I said, but we are talking about utilizing those hallway spaces as extensions of the classrooms and other learning areas as well, particularly in the neighborhoods. So within those neighborhoods, it is set up to have some learning areas available in the hallways as extensions of the classrooms that are located in those neighborhoods. So that gives us that space to do some of those things there.
If lockers were out there, or cubbies or whatever, that would not allow for that?
It would be a little bit more challenging, but I don't, I mean, we have students in the hallway now doing some things, and we're doing it there. Just as when you have, if you have a student going into a locker to get, into a classroom to get a jacket because they're getting dismissed, that might be a little bit of a challenge for that classroom there too. I think it really talks about what does that flow look like, and what is the plan going to be like going forward in that area there. So, it has been significantly divided about what that area should be. At this time, I think, we've gotten our marching orders to go back and look at what's going on and see what's best for us at this time. But when we were going back to talking about what it is, the feedback from staff was about 50-50, but where it should be, and then the impact of, with the design of the building to set up for that hallway space as extensions in the classrooms was impactful too, because we could have classroom space spill over into the hallways. Particularly, I think you saw some of the pictures there of the hallways, but also in particular to the makerspace area that also spills over into the hallway too, to make that space much, much larger. Did I answer it?
Just real quick.
No.
Matt, remember we went to Shrewsbury and we saw the middle school where the neighborhoods didn't have lockers. And I think we all agreed, and it was their priority to get the lockers out of the neighborhoods, and it was really, and they were using the space, they were really glad they didn't have lockers, it was really clean, open, you could see, when you saw it was very impressive, and they put all the lockers far away, and they weren't sure if that was a good decision either. It'd be interesting to talk to them. It was the same thing, but getting them out of the neighborhoods it seemed like they were really glad they did that, in that hallway space.
In their neighborhood hallway space.
Right.
But they had lockers,
They did.
not in the classrooms.
No, but they were kind of like in the center, they were moved to the central part of the building, and the hallways were really narrow there. So they weren't really happy with that either. Because the lockers take up a ton of space. So
Any more?
that's all. I just wanted to go down memory lane a little bit.
Janet?
A couple of years ago.
I just had I guess a question that I didn't get to ask during the beginning of the presentation, but maybe we could put it on the agenda for next time, just to go over what the working group and the design team are thinking of in terms of security for the building, overall access control, the entry sequence as you come into the building if you're a student or a visitor, how the secondary entrance works to the auditorium, and then the kind of the conundrum of the permeability of the outdoor classroom and the cafeteria and security there. So maybe just a slide next meeting.
Sure. Joe?
I noticed from the schedule here that MSBA had some review comments on the DD set on the 20th of January. Did they provide those?
MSBA provided
comments on the DD set.
They provided their comments, and we've submitted the response.
Was there
Yes.
anything significant in those comments?
No, I think, did you report the last time that it was kind of, a reach for their comments? There was nothing really controversial or difficult to answer. We answered in a very short period of time.
Are those somewhere where we could take a look at them? Are they posted anywhere?
I can put that on the FTP site, yes.
Jennifer?
Will we have an opportunity to talk more in depth about the exterior and interior materials at a future meeting? Or was tonight the night?
You can talk about it at any point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you are the building committee. If you want us to present more and discuss more, certainly we will.
Do you want to talk about it now? Are there specific, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about different materials on the interior side of things tonight. Did I?
Yeah, it's primarily intended to talk about the interiors, and then a lot of the materials here with tile, with the ceiling material, with carpet, with the other, we have samples
Right,
here.
so maybe what we can do is when we adjourn, we can, and you folks will stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to look at and ask questions about some of the different materials that are being considered versus other materials. We can talk about it at a future meeting, but I'm thinking for tonight, maybe
So I
anybody
guess
wants
more
to.
specifically, my question is, I know that we're proposing porcelain for the walls, terrazzo for the floors. This could all change during VE. However, when are we going to approve as a committee the exterior palette and the exterior materials? I mean, are
Ultimately,
we
you
just going
don't.
to drive up when it's built and say, this is what you got? Or are we going to have say in what they're proposing?
We will present to you next time a better, not definition, a better, an explanation of what decisions are decisions of the building committee and what decisions are administrative decisions, so that we can all understand that better.
Okay.
And then, when that's clear, the ones that are specifically, the things that specifically require building committee votes to move forward, once we make that clear, I need to check something here. Once we make that clear, then we'll make sure that there's enough time for discussion, feedback, and follow-up before the required votes that need to happen. Does that make sense?
And I have a list of significant items that I'd like to see incorporated into this building. And
So I would say that any input that any building committee member wants to have, I mean, if you think about it, there are quite a number of decisions to make about different types of materials, and some of them will be, you know, we're trying to look at each one of them in terms of aesthetics, durability, ease of maintenance, and through all those, and through the lens of balancing the costs of the whole project. And there will be significant decisions made administratively that don't require this committee's vote. Then there are other things that do require it. So I guess I would encourage you, Jennifer, and anybody, give as much input as you can here at the meetings. If you want to put some input to paper, you know, and get it in front of us, please do that as well. At the end of the day, as you know, if any one of us were the one person vested with the power to make all the decisions, which none of us are, and we all kind of put it to paper, we might have very different looks. We might agree on this material, but not that, this system, but not that. So I guess, yes, I would encourage you to keep doing what's been going on at these meetings and between these meetings. The questions you're asking, the concerns you're raising are all very important. And then, if you reach a point where you say, I absolutely think that this is the right and this is the wrong way to go with this particular decision, absolutely share that with us and submit however you want.
Could you just go over who's on that working committee?
Yes, the working committee consists of Dr. Hershey, a school committee member, Manzo representing the school committee, Mr. Ailes as city finance director, Mr. Collins as commissioner of public services, Mr. Shamps, member of as a representative of the administration, me, our three partners, OPM Heary, construction manager Agostini Bacon, and architect AI3, and help me.
I think that's, I can't think of anyone else.
And then we.
Then occasionally we bring people in like Matt or whatever, depending on what the topic is.
That's helpful, thank you. Does color fall under that group?
Say it again?
Color.
Color.
Decisions, do they fall with that group?
Ultimately, I believe, yes. We've never talked about color, but we're
Not as of yet. I think the.
Black and white.
If not orange and black, what color?
As much, no, I think a lot of people care, but some people, if you ask me to pick colors,
I know, that's
nobody
why
would
I'm
like the
saying, I
outcome.
hope Denise is on that.
So, no, she
doesn't moan too much at the meetings.
We
haven't talked color yet. That's true.
So, no, I mean, these sessions help very, very much. And so let's keep on keeping on with the challenging questions and the expressions of support and challenging and making everybody think. And, we'll keep bringing things back to this table. Yes, Ty?
I'd like to say thank you for bringing those renderings that you brought earlier. I'm really interested in seeing elevations or other illustrations of the maker spaces. And with respect to the classrooms, we only saw that one wall. So what's kind of lacking for me, because it's been so long since I've been in a classroom, what's the rest of the room look like? Is that the only place there's storage and we're not going to beat that up anymore? But renderings for other spaces that are could be considered either unique or a new way of thinking for somebody who's been out of high school for quite a long time. A maker space to me, it almost sounds like it's an art class or a shop space or an art shop. So those kind of things, I'd like to see more of those if you could. That'd be great, if, regardless of what color they may be. And again, thank you for bringing that stuff, especially graphics like this one up here that talk about the cost differences. I'm a sort of a visual learner. The numbers kind of glaze over, but the images with the numbers make sense to me, so thank you.
One other comment, if I could just
Jennifer.
suggest, if you could always bring floor plans of all levels and include it in your PowerPoint, just so that when you're referencing a maker space, it's at the end of a corridor, we can kind of visualize where it is and plan. Helpful.
George?
Sort of follow up to Jennifer's comment about having her list of things she's concerned about. The Green Team put together a list of lessons learned, sent copies around, had some questions about it. Not comfortable with the responses, and I'm getting concerned that that's going to get lost in the shuffle, and we're going to get too deep into this project, and too late, we can't make a change. It's cast in concrete or the steel is ordered. So I'm looking for a real definitive schedule. When can we talk about the lessons learned or the wish list, whatever you want to call it? Add Jennifer's to the list also. I think this needs to be discussed because there's a lot of effort that went into that and there's a lot of smarts behind it. It's not ours, it's from the whole working community of people who put in proposals and said, hey, this is a good school, and, oh yeah, it was good, but.
So that list of lessons learned, where does it sit?
That's what I'd like to know. I've sent copies around for about a year now.
I have it.
We'll take a look at it next Tuesday morning at our working group meeting.
Mayor, just.
Yes, Mike.
I'm sure, I know that in a number of meetings, including meetings with Mr. Benz, we've talked about that list and the items on it and answered the questions.
I think there might be a disconnect in who's at the working group meetings and who made up the wish list.
No.
So I agree with George.
We've talked about George's list with George, with the Green
But
Committee.
not as a committee or,
Yeah.
I'm unaware of.
Hang on.
With the Green Committee, I don't, with all due respect, George, the same things keep coming up over and over again. They have been answered. We'll gladly answer them again.
Then perhaps we should get the answers, because I'm missing them.
They were just,
Well, why don't we do this? We're meeting next Tuesday morning. George, if you would, prior to next Tuesday morning, if you would communicate with Mark as to which questions from that longer list, I don't know how long the list is, but the list of lessons learned, if you would communicate with Mark as to which of the questions you don't feel you've gotten a definitive answer to, we'll look at them next Tuesday and we'll make sure that you do.
Fair enough.
Okay, and if anybody else wants to see those answers as well, we'll send them out to anybody who wants to see them. And then if they, then we'll see. Then we'll see. That.
Is Mark the repository for the comments like that? Would he collect them all?
Mhm.
So if anyone on
Yes.
the committee has issues, they can get it to Mark and he'll.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Okay. So, anything else? Joanna?
Move to adjourn?
Next meeting, I was checking the calendar. The next meeting, if we go with the second Tuesday, is March 8th. So why don't we plan for that? If anything changes, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
We'll plan for Tuesday. Was I right in that?
Yep.
Tuesday, March 8th? Okay. Mrs. Visnick,
May I make a motion to adjourn?
you certainly may.
Second.
Second?
Third.
So before we vote, I just want to thank everybody. There were a lot of things touched on tonight, a lot of things covered, and this is all very helpful. So thank you. All those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned. School Committee of the Whole.
Motion to adjourn the school committee of the whole?
So moved.
And seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, no. School Committee of the Whole is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.